Hello. We'll now walk through some of the questions in the Q&A. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A. So we have a first question. Are network tokens required for agentic commerce, and how do tokens factored into unified checkout experience? Currently, network tokens are not strictly required to enable agentic commerce. Agentic commerce right now is largely leveraging sort of manual card entry type flows. However, they are foundational to ensuring that it works at scale. Ultimately, tokens are going to be the foundation for agentic commerce. Tokens allow payment credentials to be securely stored, updated automatically, and reused across devices, merchants, and channels. Additionally, agentic-based tokens specifically will be built in to provide the consumer authentication needed for a true agentic journey. And then ultimately, these tokens are there to reduce friction, improve authorization rates, and enable trusted, repeated transactions without repeatedly asking for the consumers to enter their payment details. So while yes, right now, agents are largely using form fill or variations of them, tokenization will provide the framework for agentic commerce in the future.
I'll pick up the next one. So we've got a question here, which is, what separates the merchants that are truly improving checkout conversion from those that are just adding more payment options? So we've obviously touched a bit on it today already, but obviously high performing merchants, so they're focusing less on the number of payment options and more on the orchestration of them. So when we say that, those merchants are really kind of looking at the data. They're looking at the markets that they're targeting, types of customers that they want to target, and then having the data kind of drive the right experiences for them. Also, and obviously it's market driven. So North America, where the market is less so used to things like 3DS versus a merchant then wanting to get into Europe or into other markets there. Again, having the kind of right authentication types, the right payment methods is key. And all of that without overwhelming the consumer. And we really need to make sure that it's obviously having the best checkout, streamlining that through kind of speed, security, and trust as well for the customer. But data is the really kind of key piece that sets those merchants apart.
Exactly. I've got a question here on how can I use biometrics to make my checkout better, and what about passkeys? And how do those work in practice? Biometrics or fingerprint or facial recognition allow merchants to authenticate the consumers very quickly without relying on passwords or two-factor code inputs, right? So getting a text and copying that code into a UI. Visa products like Visa Passkey aim to create a standard for authentication across merchants. So once you're bound to the device, that passkey will work for consumer authentication at multiple merchants. So this simplifies it because there's no initial binding other than the first time, right? So once I bound myself to the device that I'm using, I can authenticate across different experiences. We also see this moving into the 3DS space as well, where passkeys can replace, the traditional either issuer login or two-factor authentication that's leveraged for 3DS right now. The result is going to be a smoother customers and stronger protections against unauthorized transactions. So super seamless and frictionless is what we're going through. And we all see this as we log on to our devices, right? We know how easy it is to use facial recognition.
And we've actually a question, which I think is a good follow-on to that one as well, which is how do passkeys relate to unified checkout? So we have within unified checkout the ability for passkeys to work as part of authentication. So from a unified checkout standpoint, as well as being able to kind of orchestrate across the payment methods that we've spoken about today, and then being able to complete the payments. it can then also complete that authentication step that Brian's just spoken about there, but actually do that within the unified checkout experience. So from a merchant standpoint, wanting to offer authentication, you then wouldn't have to do a separate integration to get passkeys. That would come out of the box by doing the work with unified checkout, and that's how we've built that passkey experience in.
Yeah, I mean, James, it's worth noting that we actually have passkeys both in 3DS authentication and our click-to-pay authentication. It's the same passkey that works across both, right? So again, as we see it permeate the market, you'll have a common passkey experience for anybody who leverages Visa Payments passkeys. I have one here that'll take. What will bots need for a smooth checkout, especially compared to humans, right? Bots and agents, for them to check out smoothly, they're going to need a couple things. A, they're going to need trusted access to payment credentials, and they're going to need clear permissions from their consumers and built-in security. We've talked a bit about it, but fundamentally, tokenization is going to play a key role in allowing those agents to transact without exposing sensitive card information. The network tokenization framework is going to provide the construct for doing the authentication of the consumer, getting that token, having that token bound to a single purchase, and then ultimately having that work across the ecosystem. When these elements all work together, agents can execute a purchase seamlessly on behalf of a consumer, and they can execute complicated purchases as well.
We've got a question here around kind of expansion plans. So as we build our expansion plans, how should we be thinking about which local payment methods to offer? So that piece really, and again, obviously we spoke a lot today about the kind of complexities that come with that. But essentially, when going into different markets, the understanding the right payment methods to offer, offering that right payment method is key, because otherwise, obviously, that market you may not be a success in. With that as well, from an integration standpoint, you want to be able to do that and have the kind of maximum ROI that you can, so not building something that's going to take time and not really getting the value from it, which probably leads me, actually, I might answer another question whilst I'm on that subject, because there is a question about which metrics should I be looking at when monitoring my checkout, and how do I use those metrics to optimize? And I think that also goes hand in hand really with what we're saying there. You know, again, it's great to offer the different payment methods, but you really need to be ensuring that those payment methods are performing as expected. You know, is it performing in different routes? If you have the digital pays first, card payments second, local payments third, actually in some markets, will you have a better checkout performance if the local payment methods first? And reviewing that regular, reviewing the data regular, the auth rates, the usage rates, and also the decline. So what decline reasons? If we think about a simple use case with cards, you're reviewing the different decline reasons that you get for card payments. If you're seeing decline reasons for expired details, you know, the card number no longer exists or whatever that may be, then actually there's a simple solve for that, the likes of network tokenization and account updata. But actually reviewing that data on a regular basis is what's really going to optimize that checkout, make sure it's performing as expected, and you're continuing to enhance based on what the data is telling you as well.
Yeah, and we just talked about in the webinar, that's highly regionalized, right? So it's going to be different, potentially per locale. I've got a couple more on agents, so I'm going to kind of hit two of these here. One is it too early to start thinking about making my checkout agent ready? I think the answer to that is no. I think, you know, it is early days of agents and agentic commerce, but starting to think about it is definitely something you should consider. And first and foremost, you know, right now these agents are crawling the internet and they're interacting with web pages the same way you or I might. That's the current state, but that's shifting. But just making sure you're not blocking good bots, right? Like that's the simplest thing. Bots are going to go out and they can interact with the web page the way consumers do. So just ensure that they're not being blocked if you want them to come to your web page in general. That's, you know, a baseline minimum. And then there's going to be additional capabilities getting ready for agentic commerce as it comes. like how these agentic agents are going to interact with your platform is going to be a bit different agent by agent. There's a couple different standards out there. And so it is something to watch and as the ecosystem plays out. The other question I got at the top here is, in an AI-driven or agentic commerce, who ultimately owns the customer relationship? The merchant, the network, or the platform facilitating the transaction? It's a very interesting question, because ultimately, I don't think the relationship changes a whole lot. I think everybody's going to own part of that relationship with the customer, right? Again, when you're shopping online in an agentic experience, you still are deciding between the brands you want. You're comparing them out there. So you do have a relationship with the merchant, even if it's by proxy through an agent. They're often surfacing, the options that are branded, right? And so all of those will have a relationship with the customer, right? Just the same way we do right now. Your browser, you have a relationship with your browser that you use, right? We all are very particular about our browsers. You have a relationship with the merchants you use. It will just be about how you aggregate your shopping experiences and how you simplify them.
Yeah, there is another AI one got in as well, Bryan, if you wanted to cover that one, which is around about authorizing the token to be used for specific transactions by an AI agent, and operationally how we expect that to occur.
That's a great question. So Visa has an AI framework. Ultimately, it's all about provisioning tokens at runtime. We talked a bit about consent, right? The way we see it, agents are fantastic, but we've all used AI and we know that they make mistakes. So we want to make sure consent is clear in the beginning, and that consumer is consenting to that purchase and the amount, right? Because you don't want a hallucination to happen and have a large credit card bill. That's not good for the experience. So the tokenization framework, basically what's going to happen is you're going to go through sort of an aggregated commerce experience. You're going to decide to do things. And then ultimately what you're going to do is you're going to say, yes, I want you to buy these things. And then, network tokens are going to be provisioned for that specific purchase. And they're going to be bound, right, to make sure that that purchase is, is being facilitated correctly, right? And so there largely will be controls in place. And at least this is how we see it playing out, controls in place to help that ecosystem have some guardrails, right? And that's why we see tokens playing a framework rather than normal PANs, because with the normal PAN, there are no guardrails, right? So I hope that answered that question.
And we've got a couple actually specific on unified checkout that I'll kind of cover off in two. So the first one was about offering ACH and whether unified checkout offers this. And absolutely, we have ACH. So the e-check product is part of the kind of payment solution that we have. That's one of the payment methods supported through unified checkout out the box. Again, that can be used standalone. So the way that we have unified checkout is that you can use it standalone for a payment method, or that can be a payment method with all of the others that we support as well. And then linked to that, we've got a question about if we already support multiple payment methods and wallets at checkout and leverage network tokenization, what additional advantage would a unified checkout provide? Does it enable a single customer identity across payment methods, and how does it apply to card present? So it's a good question. So unified checkout is the integration type that we have. So again, from the value proposition from what we've covered today is simplifying that experience. So it's ensuring that, and we're seeing use cases already, like this one here, where a merchant may already have multiple payment methods. It's got digital wallets, it's got card entry, but actually that's multiple APIs. It's managing that through multiple APIs. A certain payment method does an upgrade. There's a new card network, whatever it may be, it's all maintenance, it's all roadmap space. Recently, we've had a merchant that's actually turned around and consolidated their integrations all through unified checkout because they're getting the same value through that, but just not having to manage all of those directly. And then from a card present, unified checkout is built for e-commerce. However, with using products like tokenization, obviously, there is then the ability to see that same card that's being used in store, versus e-commerce through unified checkout, and different tools and services then allow you to be able to see that customer, whether they're purchasing online, in store, and being able to get that full view of the customer as well.
We've got an interesting one here. How should I think about compliance when building my checkout for GDPR to Basel 3? It's a bit overwhelming. So I think a couple of these things. Well, so Basel 3 doesn't really regulate checkout directly, but it makes banks more sensitive to risk and transaction quality, essentially ensuring that they're operating correctly from a risk perspective, right? And as a result, secure, more predictable flows are going to be more favorable from a risk model, because they're more unlikely to have chargebacks and to have other sort of situations. So ultimately, it's driving the banks to be, more risk adverse, right? Looking for those transactions that are, high confidence, right? So the takeaway is that, faster, more secure, predictable checkout is aligned with how the banking system operates in general.
Have one come in that I'll take, and it's one that I'm very passionate about. So the question is, do merchants benefit more from offering maximum choice at checkout, or from intelligently limiting options to optimize conversion? I may sound like a broken record here with this answer, but again, there are so many payment methods that are out there. If the strategy was to, hey, we're going to show absolutely everything, that's actually going to impact conversion, because you've then got customers who are not recognizing some of those payment methods. That might make them think that this is something different, or they may feel unsafe with that particular checkout. What you need to be doing is using that kind of intelligence. So you are having the right options for the right customer, the right target market, and really optimizing from there. For myself, I'm here in the UK. When I'm checking out, there's certain payment methods I expect to see. If I was to go to a checkout that was to have multiple payment methods, slightly biased because I'm in the payments industry, it would make more sense to me. But actually, if I wasn't and I saw these other payment methods, that would make me think there's something not right with this merchant. Do these payment methods really exist? So having that intelligence really is crucial. And again, then being able to have that so that it optimizes based on the region and based on the customer. So you have a specific segment for the payment methods you're offering.
Here's an interesting one. 3DS in the US, can remind me how liability works for Apple Pay and Google Pay transaction. Is the cryptogram equivalent to an EMV transaction? So liability is largely based on the payment type and the region. So in some cases, you may get liability shift or not, and some transactions will get liability shift or not. So it's going to be largely dependent. I realize that that's sort of like a non-answer, right? Because it depends. What it does mean is the two can stack, though largely we've not seen anybody use these Apple Pay, especially Apple Pay with a 3DS experience, just because Apple Pay, is very good, and the risk, an authorization rate is very, very successful from authorization. Google Pay is really interesting because they have both PAN and 3DS flavors. And so we do occasionally see 3DS be used in concert with Google Pay for PAN transactions, right? Especially in the US, it's very interesting because we largely don't have 3DS. There is a evolving, new product called 3DS Data Only. Again, not going to provide liability shift, but if you're looking to provide additional authorization rates and reducing the risk, it's a very useful channel for providing, that type of additional trust in a transaction without the friction of a 3DS authentication flow, especially in the US where we don't really see 3DS all that often.
Interesting one here as well. So as more payment methods emerge, do you see orchestration becoming a standardized layer or remaining fragmented across gateways, ISPs, and networks? It's a great question. My personal perspective there is that as a gateway, you have the responsibility to simplify that, because that's absolutely right. As more and more payment methods come, more integration methods. That just makes more and more work for merchants. It makes their whole experience fragmented. From a gateway perspective, I think the responsibility there is to simplify that, to be able to orchestrate that in a consistent way, allowing merchants to spend less time worrying about how to optimize for payment method A versus B versus C, and actually more time on the core, which is merchants' core products, merchants being able to satisfy the customer throughout the full experience, and then letting the gateway kind of do the heavy lifting and the complexity that comes with all of these different fragmented payment methods that are there today. So I really do think that's the responsibility there.
We have a very interesting question. It says, coming out from the perspective of store rewards credit cards, where we are the card brand and the merchant brand, our store card is likely isn't the customer's top of wallet card and may not be in the customer's digital wallets, which we see often. Our goal is influencing the customer to remember to use the store card when shopping with our ecom sites. Is there a lower friction way to do this, right? So this one's interesting because there's a lot of value you get from those, store rewards card experience, especially from a rewards perspective. I'm a big rewards user myself. This is really where a really good card on file experience can beat even digital wallets, right? Ensuring that, having information to have that card in the system, so that card on file experience is actually just as converting as a digital payment wallet, even better if you know the merchant, or if you know the consumer already. This kind of creates the buy-in already. If they already have your card, then you already have a relationship with them. How do you make sure that that is the payment that's top of the payment page for you? Really comes down to a really good card on file strategy.
I think that's a great segue to another question that we can address at the same time, which is, how does the checkout experience play into loyalty? And I think I just echo everything you said there, Bryan. Like with customers today, generally customers are going back to the same merchants, or customers are coming back to your page as a merchant to buy goods because they've had a good experience before. To promote that loyalty, maximizing that experience is so key. So if James uses a store card, if James has got a store card with yourselves and you want James to be using that card on file piece is so key, so you can create that. Or on the flip side of that, if you're seeing that customers from a certain market or a certain segment, once again, are using a specific payment method, having that top of page, being able for those customers to then not have to retype information when they're coming back. So from that loyalty standpoint, customer has a simplified and secure experience with your merchant page. That's what's going to get those repeat customers, get that loyalty, and secure the checkout.
Yeah. We have another AI one with AI agent processing. How do you see chargebacks being processed? This is interesting because it's still early days in agents, right? Fundamentally, you're still creating a relationship with the merchants, right? So you should still be getting the emails, you should still be getting the responses, right? The agent, can ultimately work to collate these, right? But those chargebacks will still be coming through their normal channels. How can agents help support that and orchestrate these types of things already if they are the front-facing, face of payments or a payment flow, is to be seen. One other item too is in the future of agentic commerce where tokenization and consumer authentication is there, we hope to see a reduction in chargebacks, right? So that's another key component. But how chargeback aggregation or how the whole post-purchase process can be handled by agents is going to be very interesting to see because, again, they're the channel that you pay, but largely you still have a relationship with those merchants. They may be all individual purchases from different websites. How can they aggregate them? And there's a couple things out there, that we'll start to see aggregating the market. The post-purchase aggregation.
Know that we are running out of time. I'll answer this one quickly, and then please, as I do, if you've got any other questions, please do drop them in the chat. Anything we can't answer, we will look to circle back on afterwards. There's a question around about optimizing checkout in digital versus in-person transactions. We are seeing that world kind of come closer and closer. From an e-commerce perspective, we all know that acceptance rates are lower than in person, but of course, things like network tokenization, digital wallets, the rise of particular payment methods, the fact that things like click to pay as well is looking to remove guest checkout with network tokens, all of that is starting to bring those acceptance rates closer. And then even for the in-person, we are seeing more and more QR codes. So local restaurants here that I use, so you sit down, you've got the QR code at the table, scan the QR code, you're going into an e-commerce experience. I'm choosing my menu items, I'm purchasing from the table, that's going through e-commerce. So we are seeing them kind of blend more and more, and I think that's going to continue to happen, especially with the preferred payment methods in certain markets. That's just really going to simplify that experience for customers as well.
I'll take this good question. What role do you see device level intelligence on terminal apps and logic playing in checkout versus everything moving to cloud-based orchestration? So from a terminal perspective, I think we're going to continue to see terminals sort of as they are. I mean, they work very, very well. But what's interesting is to what James talked about is how do we see intelligence in these omni-commerce experience play out, right? Where I'm in a point of sale setting, but I may be doing a e-commerce type transaction. And that we're going to see actually like a lot of the information on sort of the device, right? Again, scanning that QR needs to know if I'm on an Apple phone or an Android phone or a Samsung phone, do I put the appropriate payment options for that fast, checkout and highly optimized checkout experience, right? So there's gonna be some information in a terminal when those terminals are your mobile phone. And then we will see cloud-based orchestration largely is gonna be happening for routing, right? So we'll see optimization on the back end to ensure that transactions are authorized at a high rate. And what can we do from an intelligence perspective to ensure that the system knows how to route and good transactions for high authorization rates and then decline potentially fraudulent transactions?
I think, obviously we're at time. I think some really, really good questions there. Thank you everybody for joining and for your participation. We hope you find this useful, but you've got our details as well, so please feel free to reach out if there's any other questions off the back of this.
Yep, we really appreciate your time and great questions. So thank you.
Thank you.